hobbyist, Anthony from AOS Coach here, and this is part 2 in a series of videos where I'm looking at tournaments to help you make the most of your next event. So if you haven't seen part 1, you can either pause this video and go back and start to look at some of the earlier milestones around getting ready and submitting that list to the tournament organizer. However, today's video is going to start looking at some of the things that are actually happening on the day, as well as wrapping up any activity post-event. So without further ado, let's actually get into what's it going to be like on the day. And this is probably an important exposure if you've never been to an event. And I know when I went to my very first CanCon event, which is a huge 400 player event, I was overwhelmed at first. There are a lot of players, a lot of game systems. There's so much going on that I needed to know, everything. Like, where's the bathrooms, where's the shops, where's the vendors, where can I, park my car. So make sure that, when you're looking at the schedule of the event, that you've left yourself plenty of time to explore the whole convention, to look at some of the great artworks and all the different things that are available to you. Because there's going to be plenty of hobby going on. But this is your schedule. This is your agenda. It's going to dictate your travel plans. It's going to dictate the way that you look at events. It's going to look at, how long you've got to play your games. It's your gaming schedule, but also it's your break schedule. Think about, things like lunch. Lots of people are going to have lunch around the same time, so it's important to know where to get lunch. It's going to be, maybe it's worthwhile bringing lunch and snacks with you along the way. And remembering that probably most people are going to have lunch around the same time, so to the time frame. So if your game finishes early, I would definitely kind of sneak out and start that process. Otherwise, you could be in a line for a long time. But think about this as your sheet. This is your go-to guide. When it comes to tournaments, preparation is key, and I've brought a checklist of the things that I bring to tournaments that I highly recommend, and they serve a purpose. Things like obviously bringing your painted army, and you might laugh at this at first, but I've seen people not bring their full army, and they've either had to play with their army down, or they've had to ask people, can I borrow some units? Otherwise they don't have their full force. So before you go, triple check your crusade box, or however you transport your army, that you've got everything you need. Make sure you've got your general's handbooks, your FAQs, your battle tomes, whatever documents that you need to run your army, as well as making sure you've got your war scrolls downloaded either on a mobile phone, or you've got them printed out. Bring copies of your armies. Some tournaments will ask you to bring X amount of printed copies of your army, or they might just ask you to have it on your phone on the day. But either way, make sure you've got a copy of your army to show your opponent. Make sure you got your dice, your tape measures, your buff counters, things like scenery dice, or anything that you use to dictate they've got a mystic shield, or they've got a command trait on them. If you have the opportunity, make sure to grab yourself a portable phone charger, something like a battery pack that'll allow you to. You probably use your phone over the tournament, whether it's phone, sharing photos on social networks, using it for your war scrolls. Your phone can get chewed up quite quickly, so if you can get a cheap battery pack, it'll go a long way. Most tournaments will ask you to bring objective markers. Some will dictate how many, but definitely make sure you've got some objective markers with you. Pens to mark on your, you're going to have sheets to fill in, who won, who didn't win. So make sure you got pens. Glues, things are going to break, unfortunately. There are going to be incidental breakages, so bring some glue, whether it's plastic glue or super glue. Water is the unsung hero. There's lots of soft drink available. There's lots of beers at events. But given that you've only got a small window of time to play at tournaments, I highly recommend you bring yourself a water bottle to keep yourself hydrated throughout the day, as well as deodorant. Being in Australia, we get to play at a lot of events, and it's quite hot. And with so many bodies in a small area, smells can be quite unpleasant. So do yourself and your opponents, a bit of a favor, and make sure you got deodorant with you that you might reapply throughout the day. Some events will ask you to bring terrain. They might dictate, you need to bring line of sight blockage or certain sizes, but definitely if you can bring terrain, tournament organizers would always appreciate that. as well as an army tray. And for me, army trays are the unsung hero, because if I'm playing in an event where there's maybe 3 games in a day, maybe 4 games in a day, the last thing I want to do is having to pack my army in my battle case, then have to unpack it when I move it to the next table. This is time that I'm losing. But also it's just a hassle, especially as a free guild player where I have over 100 models. You know, putting in 40 swordsmen, pulling them back out, putting them in, getting them out. It's just a hassle. So this is bought from Kmart. I bought this for Kmart for about $10. You probably can get a tray from anywhere. This is just something that you might have used for your mother on Mother's Day to serve a burnt toast in bed. But highly recommend you grab yourself one of these. And also something that I've pulled together that maybe I'll put down in the note section below is I like to collate my rules off my war scrolls in a 1-page or 2-page document. So the way I can collate them is actually by phase. Having to play in a restricted time limit, having to learn all the stuff about my opponent's army. There's a lot going on. So I try to make things simple like this, where I know that in the hero phase, I do X, Y, and Z. In the magic phase, in the movement phase, X, Y, and Z, so forth and so forth. So I just use an Excel sheet. Maybe you've just got a handwritten, highly recommended if you're not that familiar with your army. So the day starts, and your tournament organizer is probably going to pull you aside and talk to the group. They'll tell you potentially the scenario. They're going to tell you how the tournament is going to run. Any expectations, any things that they need to share with you on the day. Do make sure that you give the tournament organizer full attention. Don't ask about the fairy wings. That was maybe in the comment section. If you want to ask about the fairy wings, I can share why. But do listen to your tournament organizer, because they've worked long and hard to pull this event together. Do give them the courtesy of their attention. When it comes to scoring at the event, each battle is going to be worth a certain amount of tournament points, whether it's going to be, maximum points for a major victory, or, potentially no points at all at a major loss. And it's important to understand this structure, because you can see the difference between fighting for the major victory instead of getting the minor victory, but equally help stopping your opponent from getting the major victory and fighting for the minor loss instead of being major loss. And this is also important to remember in the day when things don't go our way. It's very easy to throw in the towel and kind of concede a victory when things are going against us, and it's turn 1, turn 2, critical units have been deleted, or what have I. And I could just go to the bar, or go look at some of the traders instead. But there's a bit of an incentive for me to go and fight on and try to stop my opponent getting a major victory, and bring them down to only a minor victory. So do look at the way that the game points are being allocated. While you're at a tournament and things are competitive, there's also a huge aspect of sportsmanship, and most tournaments will reward sportsmanship, whether it's through a best opponent vote or some way of ranking sportsmanship. However, remember that everyone is going to define sportsmanship differently. Some very sometimes personalities don't gel. Everyone's in a very restricted time limit. But there's some things that you can definitely do to help increase the sportsmanship overall and make your opponent feel more as a friend. And some quick and easy wins that I can see is definitely, use the first 3 to 5 minutes, into the interaction that you have with your opponent to be as upfront and honest as possible. It's about sharing how your army works. What are your command traits? How do the artifacts work? If you're using a formation, let them know how the formation works, because often, these formations are hidden in battle tomes that we all don't own. So it's important to let them know that, what to expect. When you're playing in the game, you want to be removing your failed dice rolls as opposed to picking up your successful rolls. And this is important for your opponent to be able to see, what actually was a hit, letting them know that, for this unit to hit, I need to hit a 4+, and, the opponent can clearly see all of your 4+ rolls. Keep to the schedule. make sure that, you're not spending, way too much time overthinking when it comes to your deployment. You're not spending all your time, with your nose into your war scrolls. Try to keep to the schedule and try to keep up a decent pace. I've seen too many tournament games end in the third round because it just takes up too much time, and those extra round or two could be the difference between a major victory and a minor victory, or even actually dictates who actually wins the game. Be kind to your opponent. Make sure that if your opponent, this is a personal option of yours, but if your opponent forgets a critical play, maybe they were so excited in the middle of combat that they forgot to actually have their hero phase, or whatever it might be. If you're really trying to be a good sport, you definitely allow them to go back and maybe apply that ability, that spell, go back to that phase. But definitely, you also don't want to be, if somebody continues to forget things, there's kind of an area where you draw the line in the sand. And finally, learn their name and use it throughout the game. A great way of starting this is to actually, your tournament organizer will give you a little booklet on how you score, and recording critical information through the game. And you might want to write their name down at the very first opportunity that you have to say, hey, this is Jet, great to meet you. My name's Anthony. Write their details down. You're playing Dispossessed, awesome. And this is something you can kind of go back to. The last thing you want to do at 2 to 3 hours later is to ask them, oh, sorry, what was your name again? Really sours the last 2 to 3 hours we just had together. Finally, there's going to be awards, and no competitive event is not going to have awards. So what are the awards that you're likely to see? First, there's going to be first, second, and third. This will be dictated often by not only the performance on the day, but also painting scores, the list submissions, bonus points that might be available. So this will be an accumulated who was first, second, third. They'll be often best in alliance. So for the people who didn't win first, second, or third, who were the highest rating people as a death player, as a destruction player. So even if you don't think that you're at the level to win a grand tournament, you could definitely kind of strive for the best order player. You've got best painted, so making sure that your army is at the highest standard, and this is often voted by the people at the event, not only just the tournament organizer. You'll have best opponent, the sportsmanship, and finally wooden spoon, the person who came last. And these are just some of the awards. I've seen lots of other different awards available, but these are some of the most common ones. On the day, the last thing I'd probably say is to have fun. Remember, this is a game. We're here to have fun, roll dice. Sometimes things don't go our way, but it's about having a smile and having the best outcome as possible. But also remembering that the tournament organizer has really pulled everything together. They've worked really hard. So if there's an opportunity for you to spend some time and help them, whether it's grabbing them coffee, grabbing them a lunch, setting tables up, or kind of packing them up along the way, that really does go a long way, because they'll probably spend a few hours post-event just wrapping everything up. So if you can get them on the road as soon as possible, it's greatly appreciated, and they'll probably come back for future events. So that's it when it comes to part 2 of this series. I'd love to hear, what do you do on the day? What are some of the things that you have in your backpack? How do you create a great sportsmanship with your fellow opponents and the people at the event? I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. If you didn't get a chance to check out the first part, which was preparing for the tournament, you can definitely go back into the back catalogue and hear, some of the hints and tips that we had along the way. That's it from me, guys. I'll see you in the next video.